to Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm Courtney.
And I'm MK.
And how are you?
Well, I had a very long weekend.
Heard.
Okay. This past weekend was the first annual, I don't know what the whole title is. So every place in the world, not really every place in the world, but most major cities have like a mini like Tonys for their high school
Hmm.
theaters. And some kids get picked and they go to the Jimmies, which is like competition, and kids who win on the Jimmies often end up on Broadway, whatever. Ours, there was some a schism with some people that I don't know anything about. I'm not on that side of the table, but the theater that I work at, they took over and are doing it all, like choosing the kids to send to the Jimmies all on their own without this other organization. So this was the first annual blah 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 whatever. And Dan's school was tied for the most nominations for all of the awards of the whole um, thing. They had either 12 or 13 nominations for the different
Wow, that's a
categories.
lot.
It is a lot. Um, and they, according to the news, dominated. They
Ooh,
won 6 of the 12 awards that they were nominated for. Um,
nice.
They won for the best dance execution. They won for best showstopper number, best collective ensemble performance, best collective vocal performance. They won silver, like took home the second place medal for best lead and supporting actors. So like the Jimmy Awards is its own thing, but then they have like
Hmm.
they take the five leading characters and do like a best actor thing for like lead
Oh,
characters.
nice. Yeah.
Um, and so we came in second for that. And then we won gold for overall best outstanding production of a musical. So they took home the top
Woo!
trophy of the night.
Nice. And what musical did they do again?
Guys and dolls.
Oh, right, right, right.
Yeah.
Everyone on this podcast is like, she's told us 4 times because you keep asking,
Yeah.
but
No,
it's fine.
but it was very, very exciting. And um the directors, like Dan and Pascal and Ian, everybody was in the audience. They weren't backstage. But I was backstage because I was working and
Right.
I ran around hoarding children throughout the theater for hours and hours and hours. But when they won, the kids ran off the stage and immediately like I was the one that was there on the side of the stage. So like the girls like jumped into my arms and freaked out, and like the boys were like just jumping up and down and screaming. And I was so excited that I got to be a part of that moment.
That's so nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw all of yours, and I think Dan even shared something about it.
Yeah, I was so surprised. I woke up this morning. I woke up this morning and it was like Daniel Johnson tagged you in a post on Facebook. I go, he
Yeah,
did what?
he knows that that exists still.
I was like, he did,
It's
he
like he
did.
joined and then never got back on
Right. I was like, he did.
yesterday.
I was like, he did what? I was like, he likes everything I post, but he doesn't
Right,
post things.
right.
So I was like, but it was really sweet, everything that he said. But he posted things and Pascal posted things and Ian posted
Mhm.
things, and it was just so exciting. But so very tired. Because the other thing is we don't let children use the elevators during shows at the theater
Interesting.
because they will break them. Every time, everything that we've ever done, unaccompanied children are not allowed in the elevator. Um, and during shows, it's really difficult because if there's an emergency, we need the elevator to be free.
Right.
But the different high schools all had dressing rooms spread out around the 5 floors of dressing rooms backstage. So I ran up and down the stairs to each dressing room, and they didn't put them in order. They didn't say like, okay, the first school is going to be all the first 3 schools will be on the 4th floor, so that you just got to make your way down. Nope, nope, did not. So I ran up and down the stairs for 11 hours. I got 13,000 steps in at work.
There you go. For the what, 4 hours you were there? Like,
No, no, it was an 11 and a half hour shift.
oh, right. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's good for an 11 and a half hour shift.
The last time I hit over 10,000 steps was in London. I don't move. I don't walk. I hit a solid 7, 8,000 steps every day. Like that's fine.
Yeah,
I don't,
pretty solid average, but
yeah,
that's funny.
I almost doubled my steps. And it was a Saturday. I'm not supposed to move on a Saturday.
You work in the back end.
I sit at a desk and tell people what to do on a radio.
Yeah.
But so I'm tired and I'm sunburned but I'm happy. So
Good. Yeah.
how are you?
Yeah, same minus the sunburn. I yeah, I had a really crazy weekend. Like I was saying earlier, I don't know if I said it on the podcast or just said it to Mary Kate, but like I feel like it's been 3 months since I talked to you and it's been a week. Like the last 2 weeks of my life have been so chaotic, but like in a good way, but so chaotic that I'm just exhausted. And so after Nashville and New Jersey, and then we had I said Connecticut about 75 times, but we were in Massachusetts. I didn't know where we were until we got there, which feels so accurate for my life right now. And so we just had a 24-hour trip to Massachusetts for a benefit show and made the most of it. My God, it was just amazing. So I've never been to Massachusetts, and we were out in Western Mass, so Westfield, Springfield, any of those areas people may know.
Yeah.
And we drove out Saturday morning and got there in time to like Caitlin was playing a benefit show, which was just really wonderful. She ended up being the only female on the bill. But she opened it with a bang. And I do mean that literally because one of her songs is called Otter Out of Water. And there's a line that you like fist pump with, and she straight up punched a chandelier. It was so funny. It survived, but I have it on camera and everything. It may end up on Facebook or Instagram at some point.
It's amazing.
It was the best, and she just like knocked it out of the park. And then there was like some really other great acts that were there, and like the guys that put it on, one of the guys, Tyler, like just bought this venue, and he bought it in December, but really started getting it renovated January, early February. So this was the first like big musical performance that's gone on there. They've done like music videos. They did like a whiskey tasting last week, but this was the first like show that they've
Nice.
done. And it was really cool. They're getting AC.
Oh, good.
So we're working on that. But yeah, so it was like a lineup of 6 different really good acts, and then it was for a benefit for like their dog had passed away of cancer, and so they donate to all these different animal benefits, which is really nice. So like his whole family was there. So he bought this bar and named it the Gold Room, and it's based off of The Shining. So he has that like iconic orange like
Carpet.
he has it as a rug, not the full. And then the Gold Room based off the bar in The Shining. The guy who was like one of his partners, Josh, who did the bartending stuff for the night, he was dressed up as Lloyd, the bartender. It was just, and there's so many like horror movie elements. Like there's posters, and there's just like
I love that
statue that's like a horror figure that you think is following you, but he had like this tray of like little mini like baby bottles of Jim Beam. Like it's a really cool venue. And they're really cool people. So like we stayed with them and did not sleep because not only were we up until almost 4 or 5, also we were freezing because we didn't pack enough blankets. And so I only slept like 2 hours Saturday night. And they were during the day, like from 10 a.m. to noon. So they weren't even like at normal sleeping times.
Yeah, no, of course not.
But we got up and we're like, this is going to be like a peaceful day. And so we went out to Leverett, Massachusetts, which is about an hour north near like Montague. For those of you who know, I learned a lot about geography in Massachusetts this weekend. And there's a place called the Book Mill, which has just like a lot of old used books, and it's really beautiful. And it's like overlooking like this like little river. And so we went there and we had lunch there, and then we went out to the Peace Pagoda, which is the oldest Buddhist shrine in North America.
Okay.
And it was so the shrine was beautiful, and they had a temple, and they actually had a ceremony going on at the time while we were there, but of course it was closed off. So like we heard it, but we weren't like
yeah
or anything. And it was like there was these little like lily pad lakes that were really nice. I found so many frogs. I pet one, which is my favorite. I love frogs.
Yes.
Um, and it was just like a really peaceful day. And then we went and had dinner at this place like out near where like Megan and Tyler live. And it was like prime rib night. And so like we ended our night by having like prime rib. It was just, and then I had to drive home in fog for 3 hours. But aside from that, it was like a really relaxing day. And like
Good.
we also like even after the event, like it was just like the people that we knew that were left. It was like 8 of us. We had like this like massive dance party at like midnight in the bar after everyone left. And it was a really good time. So while everything is so chaotic and so like I don't even know where I am anymore half the time, it's it's been really worth it and really nice. And while I am happy to be home for a month and a half, it it is still nice to know that like what I'm doing it for and
Yeah.
everything. Oh, and as a total side note, I'm going to promote myself because I don't know how to do it anywhere at all. I got accepted onto this artist management consulting platform in the middle of the
Nice.
week. And so any artists that are looking can consult me. But yeah, so I'll post about that somewhere on my own social media at some point. But that also happened this week. It was just in the midst of all the
All
chaos.
chaos. All right.
So
Fantastic.
yeah, so it's been really nice, like for business and for the soul, like just to
Good.
kind of do everything. So while I'm in the vein of my spiritualness, why don't you give me a little guidance?
All right. If you listened to last week's Hannibal episode, you will know that I have decided I am no longer creative enough to find quotes on my own. So I will be going on a journey along with Meredith Grey, and I'm going all the way back to the beginning. So I won't do every quote because some of them are dumb, but
Right.
uh, at some point, you have to make a decision. Boundaries don't keep other people out, they fence you in. Life is messy. That's how we're made. So you can waste your life drawing lines, or you can live your life crossing them. But there are some lines that are way too dangerous to cross. Here's what I know: if you're willing to take the chance, the view from the other side is spectacular.
So true, Meredith. So true.
The worst is that I can actually picture everything that is happening in that scene as she's saying it because it's from the second episode, which I watched probably
Yeah.
712 times.
I was gonna say the first like 2 to 4 seasons, I feel like I can hang pretty tight.
Every time I go to rewatch it, I start from the beginning and then I give up. But I've seen the first 6 episodes of Grey's Anatomy over 100 times because
Oh,
of
for
that.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, isn't that what you watched in Thailand though, too? Like you would
Yeah.
start that at night. That between that and Twilight, those were your like
Yeah,
nighttime
that's how I like
shows.
fell asleep. So like, but I would watch
Yeah.
it from wherever I fell asleep. So like, or wherever I thought I'd fall asleep. Or I'd be like, okay, well, I
Mhm.
watched episode 1 yesterday, but I definitely fell asleep. So like, I'll just start it at like 10 minutes into episode 1.
I did that with Bob's Burgers, so I got
Yeah.
it. Yep. Yeah, that's lovely. I love it. I'm a big Meredith Grey quote stan. But
Not
yes,
always her character's decisions, but
right.
like her monologues always.
Monologues nail it every time.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So all that said, let's get into this week's episode. It is indeed Hannibal, season 1, episode 7, called Sorbet.
I
Which
don't
is a
need to
pretty common
translate that
term
one. I
here,
was like, I don't need to
right? I was
translate
like,
that one.
people know what that's all about. It aired May 9th, 2013, which was my grandmother's birthday. And it was rated 8.6 out of 10. We were really like standard of high ratings throughout the season.
Yeah.
Number one song is the same, number one movie is still the same. The book is new. It's called The Hit by David Baldacci. I think we may have talked about him before because I think I've read like one of his books and they just
We
never quite hit
definitely
for
have
me.
talked about him before, but
But I know a lot of people that love him. He just doesn't like quite hit for me.
yeah.
On this day, a few things happened. Ariel Castro, if you remember, was charged with the Cleveland kidnappings. So he was found, he had kidnapped 3 different girls and like buried them on a construction site, if you remember. And his brothers were suspected to be involved and were found to not be involved in the end. And then also Jodi Arias was found guilty today. So a lot of big true crime news happening. Um, So because of all the true crime news, I thought I'd give a little throwback news. And so in 1992, on May 9th, was when the final episode of Golden Girls premiered.
Love that.
So I thought I'd have a little happy news. Um, we got a lot of new people today jumping on our production team. So our director is James Foley. He's known for At Close Range, After Dark, My Sweet Glengarry, which I just am now realizing I should have looked up if he's Irish or not, and House of Cards. So he's got a big hand in the House of Cards
Yeah.
series. And he did a lot of Madonna's videos, like Papa Don't
Okay.
Preach, like so many of them.
Okay.
He was the best man at Sean Penn and Madonna's wedding. So they're besties.
What a place to have been.
Oh my God. Could you imagine?
Oh.
What a time. Ugh. He also was offered to direct Purple Rain, and didn't take it. But like Purple Rain is genius. Like I'm not anything against James Foley, but like
No. I'm glad for us that he didn't because we got what we got. I'm sad for him
Right.
that he didn't because
Sure.
it's Purple Rain.
Right. Yeah, no, bum for him, but
Yeah.
we got, this genius that was Purple Rain. I watched it, I don't know if I told you, I watched it in theaters like last year before last, because it came back to Alamo.
Yeah.
And I think I watched it like in the middle of the night, and I was like, this is cinema genius. Like,
Yeah.
throw Prince in anything and you're sold, but like one of the best movies. He graduated from SUNY Buffalo. So he's kind of from your neck of the woods. He was born in Brooklyn and he lives in Bay Ridge now, but New York born and bred.
What's his
So,
first name again?
James Foley. He started at SUNY Buffalo and then later on did SUNY Platts.
Oh, okay.
I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
But I mean, New York through and through, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is our director. Our writer is Jesse Alexander. He's known for
I don't know why this wasn't on the list of things that he's known for. Because he directed both of the 50 Shades sequels.
Oh yeah, I actually meant to put that in my like that's the most recent thing he's done, and he hasn't really seemed to do anything since 2018.
Well, maybe,
but yeah,
maybe it's because they weren't good, but
right. I mean, he's also 70, so he's like
right.
Maybe he's just kind of like winding down a bit. But yeah, I did have that in my brain to mention and forgot. We have our writer this week is Jesse Alexander, known for Alias, Heroes, Eight-Legged Freaks, and Lost. We have a lot of crossover with like writers this season. They all wrote a lot of things together.
Yeah.
A couple of fun facts. He attended Sarah Lawrence.
Okay.
Which I didn't realize how long ago that became co-ed. Like I knew it was co-ed.
Right.
But I didn't realize it was like 60s when it became co-ed.
Yeah.
Also he on the show American Gods, he actually replaced Brian Fuller to be the showrunner for the second season.
Okay.
He was then replaced for the third season, but
okay.
Just, another.
I was just talking about something that I was talking about how Brian Fuller, my dad and I were talking about Brian Fuller, and I was talking about how he was the showrunner for the first season of Star Trek Discovery, and I was just like talking about how I hate Star Trek Discovery, so I'm sad.
Yeah. Jesse Alexander also worked on Stargate Discovery, but I think he wrote like one episode or something. It wasn't like a major contribution. Yeah. And so then our editors are Michael Dougherty and Ben Wilkinson, who we've talked about before. I think they did the last two episodes.
I think so. Yeah.
But our guest star this episode.
Boy, he looks so excited.
You don't know who our guest star is this episode? Our guest star is Gillian Anderson.
Oh, no. I didn't. Okay, here's the thing. This is why I didn't know what you were going to do for this, because we still haven't actually talked about as a guest star Jacob Kowalski.
Oh, Jacob.
Yeah, that's his character in Fantastic Beasts. His name is Dan, but I always just call him Jacob Kowalski because
Yeah.
that's his character in Fantastic Beasts. But the other thing was in the first scene that he was in, he walked on screen with his boyfriend who's not his boyfriend or whatever, and he goes, "This is Tobias." I go, "Hey, I know him." And my mom thought I was talking about Mads Mikkelsen. My dad thought I was talking about Jacob Kowalski, and I go, "No, no, no, the guy who was Michael Schusser on Hemlock Grove, who's his boyfriend there."
Oh
And
yeah.
he was like, they were like, "Oh," I go, literally no one important on this screen. It just
Yeah. Just this other random guy.
this is
I
other
did
random
not look
guy who
him
was in
up.
another show that we did
Yeah.
before. And I was
I
like, so it's
recognized
fine.
his face.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no. Of course I'm going
Of
with
course it was
Gillian
Gillian Anderson.
Anderson.
I get it.
What are
It
you
makes
thinking?
sense. I get it.
Ah,
I just because I was like, wait, there's so many people because I know
I
how many
know.
people we haven't talked about yet. I was like, what do you mean do I not know?
She was actually the next, like, she was the highest build
Yeah.
that we haven't talked
Well,
about
because
too.
she's
So
Gillian Anderson.
yeah, and I didn't realize how much she's done. So of course she's known for the X-Files. That's where everyone knows her from. But I didn't realize like how consistently she's been working since then.
Yeah.
Like I knew she'd had some other big roles, but it's been like
I mean,
consistent.
I mean, she was Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't watch that, but I did know that. So she's known, she plays Dr. Bedelia de Maurier, which I call her Jillian throughout the entire episode because I didn't know that from watching the episode.
Yeah, no, she didn't.
Um,
She never had a name in the
nope,
episode.
sure didn't. Um, she's known for the X-Files, The Fall, which she actually produced, The Last King of Scotland, and Bleak House, which I've always wanted to watch Bleak House and have not. She's been a
I
lot. She's been in The Crown. She's, got some new
she
stuff. Where she was in.
sorry, thinking of Bleak House, she was in one of the Great Expectations adaptations too, wasn't she?
Probably. She did a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, and currently she just was on 3 seasons of Sex Education, which I think just ended on Netflix. And then she
It
plays the mom.
did it just end or did it not? Because I weirdly Nishiti Gawa is not in a lot of the season of the fourth episode of Doctor Who because it was filming at the same time as Sex Education. So is there
Oh,
more
interesting.
coming?
I don't know. I thought it ended last year.
Oh, I don't
So I don't
know.
know.
I just know that there was I don't know how long ago they filmed some of the Doctor Who stuff or
Sure.
like vice versa, but I do know that episode 4 of Doctor Who is Doctor Light because Nishudi had Sex Education filming conflicts.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Let's see. Where's my Wikipedia? That's what I want. Yeah, it ended September 21st, 2023.
Oh,
Um,
but September. Okay, so that
yeah,
makes
so it
sense.
was late. Yeah, it was late in the
Yeah,
year.
because Doctor Who would have more post-production time than Sex Education would.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so she did that, and she's also in the new show Scoop, the movie that's coming out, and
Okay.
it's about one of the scandals. I think it's about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. But it's about one of those uncovering
Mm.
quote unquote the scoop behind everything. Um, so some fun facts about her. She was voted clown, most bizarre girl, and most likely to be arrested during her class. And she actually was arrested at
I
her
was gonna
graduation for gluing like doorknobs or locks or something. Like it was something pretty tame, respectively. But she was actually arrested like around her graduation for that.
That's amazing.
Mhm. She was offered to appear on a cover and nude in Playboy, and she said she was flattered, but she did not do it. Um, she's the youngest actress to win Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama at 29.
Ooh.
Um, yeah, she's just like, oh my God, she's just so incredible. She was the first actress to receive an Emmy, a Golden Globe, and a SAG Award in the same year. And fun fact, her daughter, she actually kept a secret until 2001. And I think I meant to look and see when she was born. I think it was like 99. Julian Anderson, daughter. Um, because they like did a book or something and then they came out about it. Uh, how old she actually was. Oh no, she was born in 94. and she was kept a secret until 2001. So she just didn't want her to be in the spotlight. And she
Yeah.
actually went back to working on X-Files 10 days after Piper was born. Like,
Okay.
so wild.
I was right. She was Miss Havisham in the 2011 version of Great Expectations.
No. She's done so many things on stage, on
Which
screen,
which
on
is
film.
which is the one where Vanessa Kirby played Estella. And if you haven't watched The Crown, you don't understand why I'm obsessed with Vanessa Kirby, but
I haven't seen any Great Expectations. Like I read the book, but I
well,
haven't
that's
seen it.
incorrect. You should do that. But you should start with the 1996 version with Ian Grufford as Pip because it is definitively the best and most accurate to the book.
Okay.
But so
Good to know. Good to know. I'll come to you for my schedule of how I need to watch them.
okay, perfect.
Yeah, so now it's time to talk about Hannibal. Season 1, episode 7, Sorbet. We start out with Monaco, where Will is teaching the class and he's talking about the Chesapeake Ripper cases. And he's like, here's all the like identifying features, here's where some things are differentiated. What are we gonna do? And then they start discussing Miriam, and he's like, here's why she kind of was like off the radar. She wasn't quite the same.
Yeah.
They thought she was the quote unquote the knife or whatever. And then they were like, then her arm showed up, and so now we don't know what's going on. Which is how we kind of wrapped up the last episode too.
Yeah.
Um, and so they start talking. So Jack is in there talking about like, how do you know this new murder is not the Ripper? Because they find this guy in the bathroom, and they have yeah. Oh, well, let's be talking
Well,
about
we
a little bit
we
later,
didn't get to the, but they're
yeah.
on their way to see the new
Right.
thing.
And he's like, well, the Ripper is really theatrical, and we, follow how he's done very specific things. He doesn't just like leave a mess. He doesn't like leave like a weird cut. Like it's very specific.
Yeah.
And so then we hop over to I cannot read my own handwriting. I woke up and then started watching this. So he said, so Hannibal's the opera. That's where we go next.
Okay, yes, because here's the thing. They introduced us to the opera with the most disgusting thing I have ever seen on television. Like, forget all the blood, forget all the gore, forget the cutting open of fucking eyeballs and shit that the show has done. They started with the inside of this girl's windpipe moving, and then the camera went back up out of her throat to like, it was like, instead of like a shot from a doctor's camera starting outside and going in, it was like a reversal of that. And I was like, what the fuck am I watching?
Yeah, this is opera singer's throat. That was the part I couldn't read in my own hand.
Yeah, it was grody.
It was such a visual element. Like it was so well done in an uncomfortable way.
Yes. Oh God. Ugh. Like I literally was actually, the weird thing is this episode was not as gory as a lot of other episodes, and yet I was more uncomfortable during this episode than I have been watching anything else we've watched on the entire podcast.
Well, there was a lot of disturbing elements that weren't necessarily visual, but added a visual element to a disturbing concept. And so we see the windpipe coming out, and we see this opera singer, and then we start panning the crowd, and Hannibal's there because of course he is, and it turns out they're like a cancer relief benefit, like all this stuff, like it's for a good cause and everything. And then he starts mingling because he knows everyone there, and a woman starts like chiding him for not having any more dinner parties, and I was like, you want him to kill more people? You don't know you're saying that, but that's what you're telling him. And in the midst of this, Franklin is there and comes up, and he is like fangirling over Hannibal. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're here. Like, I thought you might be, but like also like how did we end up in the same place at the same time? It was so cringy.
So cringy.
And it's so like, this was another one of those scenes where it's like Hannibal is doing the right things as a professional, because like as a psychologist, like you're not supposed to
Yeah.
like make note that you know your clients unless they come out, and if they come out and say it, like you can
Then
acknowledge
it's
them.
okay. Yeah.
But
But like
like,
his and like later when he was like, why didn't you talk to me?
yeah. And he's like, and she's like, oh, what is this life you're not telling me about? And he's like, I have secrets, it's fine, we don't talk about my whole life. And then he's
Yeah.
like, I'm one of his patients, and he's like, okay, that
Yeah.
was it.
That was the
But
secret that I couldn't talk. I wouldn't even be comfortable like talking to like my GP in public,
yeah,
let alone like my psychiatrist.
right. Yeah. And it felt like it, this was kind of a weird scene with Franklin because he's always been a little like off,
Yeah.
but he felt so much more off in this episode, I feel like, than he did last time.
Yeah, no, last time, but to be fair, last time we saw him like crying, and this time we didn't see him emotional. We just saw like the real reasons why he's in therapy, and I was like,
Right.
oh,
Yeah, it
oh.
was very strange. And then we get the credits. So, which is one thing I like how short the credits are for the
Me
show.
too.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's kind of strange for like a horror show because I feel like a lot of them do a lot more of the like foreshadowing or like here's some visuals that are going to come up. Like I
No.
mean, both Hemlock Grove did that, Bates Motel, like all of these did like,
Yeah,
which Bates
but
had hit or miss, but
the difference is this is the first show that we're reviewing that's on basic cable.
oh, that's true. I didn't think about that. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so this is a Fox, like it's a
Hmm.
normal basic cable show. And like if you listen to our Sci-Fi Sunday episode, we talked like 20 minutes about the tiers of cable, so I'm not going to get back into it. But
Right.
um Fox needs to have commercial breaks. They can't waste time in the episode with an
Credits.
unnecessary. That's not true. The Exorcist was also Fox. Um,
You're right, it was.
but
But it
but
was
but The
different.
Exorcist, it was different. And The Exorcist, their credits were longer, but they were definitely shorter than any of the other ones we watched.
Yeah.
Like American Horror
Yeah.
Story, Bates
So
Motel,
long.
and
Hemlock's Grove was very
Hemlock
long,
Grove.
had very
They're
long
all really,
credits.
really long. But Exorcist and Hannibal are both on Fox. They both can't
Mhm.
afford to lose significant storytelling time
Right.
with extra long credits.
Which
And
speaking of, oh, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, did Dead Like Me have long credits? I don't remember it having.
It wasn't long, but it was more than I expected for it. It wasn't like this. Like it was longer than
Yeah,
Hannibal, but I don't
but
remember it being insanely long.
I think I really want to say that Brian Fuller is like, let me just fucking tell a story. I don't need to waste my
Yeah.
time on credits.
Well,
Like,
Weeds has really long credits though.
does it?
Hmm.
Um, huh, I wonder.
So I
Oh
don't
no,
know.
yeah, oh, Dead Like Me's credits were about a minute long.
Oh, that's probably about how Weeds is, but like they're longer
Yeah,
because Weeds plays the whole like Little Boxes song throughout their credits.
right. And
Um,
Dead Like Me had a song too.
yeah,
Hannibal's opening credits are 21 seconds long.
yeah, which is very short.
Significantly shorter. So now I'm just
Especially after watching something like American Horror Story, which has like pretty long credits. But speaking of like, I know we talked a little bit about the like cable stuff, but when it comes to horror, like the new American Horror Story season, um, it's so clear how the production has changed between the seasons because it started out, you know, hardcore FX and still technically FX, but it's been bought out now. It's like Hulu's really promoting it a lot more than FX does.
yeah.
And the credits are so long, but the episodes are so short for this
Are
new
they?
season. Like they had like 32-minute episodes for the last like two or three episodes of the last season of American Horror Story. And it's
What
so strange. And it's
what channel was Weeds on
oh,
initially?
I don't know. I want to say like oh, it may have been on like a network.
Because I'm
I
curious.
didn't watch it. I watched like three episodes of it. Um,
It was on Showtime.
okay, that's what I was thinking, but I couldn't
And
remember.
what was Dead Like Me on originally?
Also Showtime, right?
Also Showtime. Yes, it definitely was Showtime. I remember
Mhm.
that. So here's the difference. Weeds and Dead Like Me were on Showtime. So they have minute long credits. Exorcist and Hannibal. Exorcist is only 31 seconds. Hannibal's
Mhm.
21 seconds. There, that is absolutely, we're cutting credits because we have to share time with
Yep.
commercials. That's 100% what's happening.
Yeah. Which to an extent, it's kind of a bummer. Like, I like it for this show in particular. I like how succinct it is, but I like it. I don't mind the long
I
credits
mean,
sometimes when
I mean,
they
but think
introduce
about,
stuff.
yeah, but think about how the difference in the season one Grey's Anatomy credits and now they don't even have credits anymore.
I haven't watched Grey's Anatomy in like 7 seasons.
Well, okay, but in the last 7 seasons, it's still been the same.
Mhm.
Like they just do the black screen with Grey's Anatomy. Like
Yeah.
they don't have the song and at all anymore. When
They
you're
don't have the
trying,
song at all anymore. I
no,
might be further behind then because I for sure thought they did still when I watched it last. But again, it's been a minute.
yeah, yeah, they don't even have a song at all anymore.
Mm.
So, and in
It's so
season one,
strange.
they had like a full
Mhm.
35-second thing. Um,
Yeah.
so that's what
Weird.
happens when you got to share time with commercials.
Which, like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Um, yeah, so then we go to the morgue, kind of. We're in Jack's dream, we learn, and he is wandering around. Quantico goes into the morgue in the lab when we hears a phone ringing and it's attached to Miriam's hand. And then the next scene, we see him getting up in the middle of the night to take a phone call. And that's where we hear about the new body.
To be
I will
honest,
say,
I somehow missed that that was a dream.
so that was going to be my next statement. This was actually not really well edited because if you see the later scenes when he's having these same dreams,
Yeah.
it's clear that it's a dream later
Yeah,
on.
I can usually tell
And
when Jack or Will are in dreams. It's pretty, they usually do a really good job. This time I
right.
did not know that Jack was dreaming.
No, I rewound it 3 different times to double check. And I was like, maybe it's not a dream. I literally put my notes, maybe he's sleeping. Like, I don't know. But then when you use context clues and you follow out the rest of the dreams, that's the only times Jack are really Jack in this scene. And we have him at the crime scene. We have him at this, but it's not really, he's not the focus.
Yeah.
Um, so the only times he's really the focus are when he's having these trips. And it's
Yeah.
kind of showing his spiral of what's
Yeah.
happening with Miriam.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
can, I
it
mean, I
was
knew that that was the point of the scene, but I did not recognize that it was a dream and not him just like losing his mind.
yes, yes. And I think it's too hard to tell because of the way they did it.
Yeah.
Um, which is strange since they're both editors we've had before who have done dream sequences. Like they've done dream scenes with Will.
Yeah.
Um, So he gets in the middle of the night. We get this phone call for a new body, and Jack thinks the Ripper is starting a new cycle. And he's like, we need to jump on this because he falls off for a few months after, but like this is the time to
He's
get
like
back
that we
in.
have 9 days to figure this out.
Yeah. And so we go to the crime scene and we learn that this man who was killed has had surgery, but then has also had the surgery undone. So someone came in and stitched this man up to then
Undo this.
haphazardly undo it because they talked about how the sutures were like undone by hand. They weren't done medically, even though the original
Yeah.
surgical like stuff was done
Yeah, it,
medically.
it, it wasn't, it didn't seem like it was like unsewed. It seemed like somebody ripped it open.
Right. Yeah. And so then we get Will's rewind and we're always following the deer. Which
Yeah,
like
that was fucking weird.
so here's the thing about that. It feels like it's an overdone storyline now. Like we had it in the beginning, which was important because he used the deer antlers to, hang everyone up. And so it's fine to have it as an idea. And it's nice to have like the statue in Hannibal's office, like as a reminder. But I think having the same scene every episode is too overdone.
See, but I didn't feel like it was overdone. I just felt like it was out of place because I don't remember the deer being in the last episode.
It was. It was briefly whenever he was in the office and he was like going over notes before Hannibal and Bloom walked in. He saw the deer and then he saw Hannibal and Bloom.
Okay, I didn't
Mhm.
remember it being in the last couple episodes. I thought it was just like out of fucking
Yeah.
nowhere that was still following the deer, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. No, it's been very briefly in all of them. Except maybe one, but it's been in the majority of them. And but yeah, it was very out of place the way they did it this episode. So we have the deer, and then he goes into where we learn that the man was heavily sedated and he
Yeah.
was already bleeding. And before the killer got him, and then he had tried to, they were like, he tried to take the heart, but something happened. And this is where Will steps in and he's like, he wasn't trying to take his heart. He wasn't trying to kill him. He was trying to actually save him.
He was
Like the medical procedures were to
massaging his
like,
heart.
right. He was trying to make it like keep like it started. Um, and then this is where Z jumps in and he starts talking about like there's 22 components of the Ripper and we've got every one of them here. And Jack's like, yeah, it's the Ripper. And Will's like, you guys are not saying things that make sense. He's like, that's not true at all.
Yeah.
Like you're just making up rules.
But also, as Z's listing things that are similar, I'm like, but that's not true. Like that didn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's not even
Which is
what
exactly
happened.
what Will said. Yeah.
That's literally not even what happened.
No. These people and they're jumping to conclusions. So Will says that like the actual murders are someone trying to make a quick buck, not someone trying to like create this legacy of Chesapeake Bay Ripper.
Yeah.
Because it was too shoddily done. But Jack is so worked up over Miriam that he can't seem to like, calm down from
he
it
is
and
not.
make logical decisions.
No, he's not doing well.
Yeah, so we go over to our friends Franklin and Hannibal. And Franklin this is where he was telling him, he was like, I tried to get your attention because you just didn't see me. And Hannibal's like, no, I for sure saw you.
I for sure saw you. I just didn't want to do that.
Yeah. And he's like, I was just, in my element doing my own thing. And then we see him kind of like spiral and he's like, I think we'd be really great friends. Like, why don't you befriend me and talk to me all the time?
Is this when he started talking about how he wanted to touch Michael Jackson's greatness?
Yeah. So then he goes into how he starts talking about Michael Jackson's death and he's like, if I was his friend, this would have never happened. I would have seen all of the signs and I would have never let them get to him.
I would have saved him from himself.
I was like, you are so delusional.
Right.
Like, Jesus.
And Hannibal goes, what would you have gotten out of being friends with Michael Jackson? And he's like, I just would have touched greatness.
Yeah, it's so insane. He's so insane.
Unfucking hinged.
Right. And so then we get Jillian and Hannibal because we go through a little like Hannibal tirade.
Yeah.
Rachel's about to come grab her notebook, so when I slide away and come back, that's why.
Okay.
But so Jillian's talking to Hannibal and she's telling him, she's like, you're not really honest. Like that's the problem. Is like, are you going to be honest with me while we do this? And we learned that Hannibal has completely ignored her retirement. She has been trying to retire as a psychiatrist for so long, and he's just like not letting her. And so she's like, I'm both your colleague and your therapist, and like,
but I'm not your friend. But she basically says the same thing to him that he just said to Franklin. Like, we're not. Yes, I understand you, but we're not friends. That's not what this is.
Yeah, and she also really delves into the sense of like she tells him he's lonely, which obviously is a thing.
And she also talks. When she says that he's a version of himself that's wearing a person suit, I was like, ugh! That's gross.
I know, but it's so true, and it's
like, so true in a metaphorical way, but like
right
for who knows what he's doing with.
It's icky, but it's true.
It's icky because I don't know what he's doing with. I don't know what he's doing with human skin. That's why it's icky to me.
Mm-hmm. And so then we jump to our third iteration with Hannibal, and we have Hannibal and Will. And they're now talking about the murder not being the Ripper and how like Will's like convinced it's not, and Hannibal's like, well, why do you think that? And he's just like, no, nothing lines up. He's, saving people, but also mutilating them a bit. Like it's a weird situation. And they come to the bottom of where like the only organs that are being taken are quote unquote valuable organs.
Yeah.
And so never mind, she's not coming in here. So that's interesting. But I mean, obviously Hannibal's the one that knows if they're valuable or not because he's the one taking them. And so
See, but
then we have this.
I don't know. I don't think, I do genuinely think that the guy in the bathtub was not Hannibal.
Oh no, absolutely
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
We
yeah.
know it's this other guy. We know
Yeah.
that this other guy came and did it at
But
the
I think,
end.
I think the thing that's confusing and frustrating and tricky is that the reasoning that Hannibal gives Will to follow to like lead him off Hannibal's track is also actually legitimately what the other guy is doing. So Hannibal is both
Right.
saving his ass and helping the police.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like because there's that whole stereotype of psychopaths who are like, I want to be the best, but also I don't want other people to take my spotlight. And so he has that weird sense of doing that. Um, but also only when it really disconnects him because he was not that way with our first guy. He didn't
No.
help them. He knew it was the first guy that was doing these murders and didn't help them because he was also involved. But when you see this guy who's coming in and taking some of the thunder and getting the name and the recognition of the Ripper, when it's not him, he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, we're going to find this guy. Like he can't be getting the, recognition for what I'm doing. But
See, and I don't even know if I think that might be part of it, but I do think that he genuinely like was just trying to move the detection in
mhm,
a different direction and accidentally caught the guy. Like I really don't even know
right.
that that was really his intention.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. I think he just really didn't want it to be seen as a Chesapeake Ripper, whether it was because he was diverting or because he was claiming that stake. Um, but then we get this really weird flashback, which this is another thing that I felt was kind of misplaced in the episode. Um, we get the weird flashback of this doctor who's seeing Hannibal, um, and he's like, "Do you have any other infections?" Because like they're going to tell us when we run these tests. So you have to, kind of let us know up ahead. And he's like, "Oh, I'm not diseased." And he's like, "That's not
No,
the
but
same thing."
yeah.
And so I'm sure that will come up later,
Yeah.
like whatever his actual infection is. Um, but
Yeah.
it kind of felt like a weird placement for that.
I get what they were doing with the flashback because of the way they like edited it and it moved into the
Mhm.
montage and it like told us what
Right.
it was. But I agree. I This episode felt less smooth
Hmm.
than some of the other episodes. I definitely felt like I didn't really follow it as well. There was
Yeah.
too many things happening.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And so then we do jump in today, and the doctor is pulling over on the side of the road. Um, and we see that the car is leaking, and his oil is
Well,
leaking. Adam's
before we see that, when Hannibal with the important part of the flashback scene was Hannibal was with him, he was like, "Can I get your business card
oh, right.
for my records?" And then it turns out that he has a fucking like massive like
Rolodex.
1960s secretary of a CEO Rolodex full of fucking people.
Okay, that was still popular in the 90s. My parents had a Rolodex in the 90s.
Yeah, but you know what I mean by like the business,
Yeah.
like a business office in the 60s and the type of like the amount of people that are
Hmm.
on the Rolodex.
Yeah.
Wild.
Um,
I've also
yeah, it's
never seen someone with a Rolodex in real life.
really. So
Yeah,
my grandmother was a real estate agent. She had a business Rolodex, but she
yeah,
was older, obviously, but she had it. I mean, she had it in the 90s.
yeah.
And then my parents had a Rolodex that had our family, all of our family information and our like any of our business information we
I think my
needed.
mom might have had it in her office, like when I was a little kid, but like I don't remember it.
But so yeah, I loved the Rolodex. I would spin that thing. Man, I was probably so annoying with it, but I loved that Rolodex. And I would go through, I remember even when I was like in junior high, I would go through the Rolodex, and that's how I would find the people to like sell Girl Scout cookies too, is I would just call all of the numbers of the
That
Rolodex.
is amazing. I love it.
It was a very integral part of my childhood. Um, but also the 1960s businesses.
Yep.
But yeah, so then as this, this doctor is pulled over, he's looking at his car, Hannibal pulls up behind him. And it's just like the most stoic, terrifying version of himself
Terrifying.
because he doesn't really say much. He just kind of like walks towards this guy very menacing. And of course, we know he kills him because we see that he is pulling these business cards and stuff later.
And he's
yeah. And when they find the body, they find the heart and the kidney are gone, which of course are two valuable portions of a body. And then we get a quick scene where they're discussing in the lab. That didn't really feel too necessary, but it's fine. And so then we go to Hannibal and Bloom, who are the best of friends now that they've had their mom and dad dinner with Abigail. So they're cooking together. And Hannibal Bloom says she'd rather beer than wine. So Hannibal just like happens to have this beer that he's brewed in the fridge.
Because of course he does.
Did he put in this beer? Because everything he eats or drinks has a human remain in it. And so like which portion went in here?
Do you think it's everything he eats or drinks? Because I think he actually genuinely drinks really good wine.
So I think so, and I'll tell you why, because it's something he says in the very last scene. That's why. Okay, so we'll get to that. But yeah, so they're like real friends.
Oh, I know what I think I know what line you're talking about, but I think we'll talk about it when we get there. Yeah.
So Hannibal's like talking with Bloom and she's bringing up different things, and he brings up like that people thought they were having an affair, and he's like, why didn't we have an affair? And I was like, this is the most strange thing coming from this man. Like, we know how unemotional he is, but also how like needy he is for a connection. Yeah. Which is also what Jillian had talked about, his loneliness and everything. And we see it with Abigail. We now see it with Bloom that I didn't realize we were going to see.
And that's the spoiler that I accidentally saw from last week. Was the episode description said he begins his seduction of Elena, and I was like,
small portion of this episode,
and I was like, the fuck. And I was like, but so then obviously after I saw the episode, I go, okay, well, barely.
Right.
The Amazon episode description is Hannibal sees his own therapist and begins his seduction of Elena. And I was like, those both took less than 10 minutes of this episode together.
Like not even. Oh my gosh. Those are such small portions.
Those were the things I had spoilers about. The one with Bloom was the one that I was like, I'm concerned about where this episode is going to go.
Right. Nowhere was the answer. But yeah, so he's bringing all this up, and then Bloom starts talking about like Will and stuff, and he's like, how did I never know about Will? And she's like, I didn't want anyone to know about Will. She's like, I wanted him to be left alone. Yeah. Because I knew this was going to happen, everything that's happening now.
Yeah.
Because she's smart. So then we go back to Jack, who's having his morgue thoughts again, and we see that this time Miriam's arm is gone. And when he turns around, he sees Will has been like cut up and resutured up, and his eyes with that glazed over ghost look, and he's missing the arm that synonymous to Miriam's. And then we go back to Hannibal, and this is where he's going through his little black book, but he's doing his Rolodex, and he's making a recipe match with every Rolodex card. And so what he does is he pulls a card of the person he's going to go kill, and then takes whatever body part he needs to create this recipe that he's come up with.
And then keeps the meat stored in the freezer.
Mm-hmm. But they're like legitimate recipes. So he has like calf liver, and it's that's a normal thing.
And like lamb brain. Right. Kind of gross. I know it's still a normal.
It is, but it's like still normal. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was one that was like a chicken liver pate or something. And I was like,
pate, yeah. Yeah. So it's like he just under the radar. So we go back to the lab, and they've been lining up all these victims that we've just seen Hannibal pull all these recipe cards for. And Z is convinced with a couple of the lab people that they're actually selling the parts, like on the black market or something. He's like, no, there's no way anything this is happening
Well, because
unless they're making sausage out of it, and we see
right.
Hannibal making
Well,
sausage out
because
of it.
they yes, but they discuss because Will brings up because Hannibal told him to bring up the idea of organ donations. And then they
Yeah.
realize that all of the victims are not only missing the organ, they're also missing the what they call the USB cables, the veins and arteries that like keep the organ alive that you don't remove until you reattach them are
Mhm.
also missing. So they're like,
They're staying
okay.
fresh.
So they're staying fresh, which we
Mhm.
know is because of
It's
yeah. Uh,
it's why people make veal.
yeah.
Like it's yeah.
Yeah. And but so they're like, well, it does actually make sense. Like black market organ donations, like this is a thing, like this is probably a really good idea of what could be happening because they are keeping those quote unquote USB cables.
Mhm.
And then Z goes, unless they're just making sausage out of them.
Yeah, and well, that's what they're doing. But also this is where it's um noted that Will thinks there's two killers here. So
Yes.
that's a thing to keep in mind. And so then we're back at Franklin and Hannibal. And this time Franklin has brought cheese to their therapy session because he's still trying to befriend Hannibal. And he's like, it's such a shame I have to like pay you to see you. And it's like, we're not friends, bro. Like, you're paying
Did
me to
he
help you.
did he see did he actually have cheese with him? I know he was talking about the cheese store that they both happened to be
Well,
at.
he said he brought cheese, but we never saw it. But he
Oh,
said he
okay.
brought cheese.
Because
Yeah.
he was like, I saw you at the store, that's the
Yeah.
best cheese store in the and like I'm like, it's like we have the same taste in the finer things.
Yeah. And then they talked about thyromancy, which I guess is divination by cheese. I meant to look that up more and I
Oh,
didn't. So I
I
don't know.
also meant to look that up, and I really think it might be my new favorite thing in the world.
Did you actually look it up?
No, I didn't. I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
Because
Excellent.
that just honestly seems like the most amazing thing. So tyromancy
Pyromancy.
or the practice of telling fortunes with cheese was first officially mentioned in the second century in the writings of the Greek historian and professional diviner Artemidorus.
The first article that comes up on mine is from Savor. Savior, it's
Yeah.
Saveur. I never say it right. It's the unbelievable history of Tyrone.
Yeah, that's where I'm reading this from.
Oh, is that where you're reading from? I love
Yeah.
it. Oh God.
This guy apparently didn't think that cheese was a great invention, and he noted that at time the food signifies trickery and ambushes.
Wow. That's
This
the
is
craziest thing.
um a typical use for tyromancy was to determine who you would marry. You'd simply carve the names of all potential suitors into some pieces of cheese and then wait to see which one molded first. And there it was, your life partner.
I'm doing that. Rachel has so much cheese in her fridge. She just bought some more.
People also analyzed the number and size of holes in a block of cheese, the patterns of the mold and veins, and the shapes of the curds made as they coagulated. The process is similar to that of reading tea leaves or coffee grounds.
That's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. Also the craziest, but the like most fun.
After the 1920s, cheese fortune telling essentially disappeared, perhaps in part due to the swift rise of tarot after the invention of the Rider-Waite deck in 1909.
What a loss. What a loss to the world.
Since launching
Does it
these,
say
okay,
does it say what cheese is the best to use?
no, well, I didn't see that. But today, tyromancy still lingers in the realm of obscurity, though I'm working on to change that by leading workshops and one-on-one sessions to teach people how to read their own cheeses. Since launching these classes during the pandemic, they've been selling out, which I attribute in part to the popularity of witch talk and the general feelings of uncertainty created by COVID-19.
Well, now I know what I'm searching on TikTok next. I will end up on cheese talk.
Ooh, cheese. Oh my God, somebody said this would be so fun at a bridesmaid party.
Yeah.
Courtney's gonna show up to my bachelorette party with
Cheese.
just boxes of cheese.
I'm gonna get one of those big Wisconsin cheese wheels,
Which
like that the government used to send out.
which I'm sure my very Muslim sister and very Catholic sister-in-law will really appreciate.
Gonna be like exiled from the wedding. I'll just stand outside and wave while you're all getting married. Oh, you better watch out. I'm coming with my cheese. So oh wow. I part of me's glad I didn't actually look that up before now because I would have already just known all of that. Now you've brought it to the forefront for me. Thank you.
We will be hosting our own cheese divination TikTok classes.
Can you imagine? Oh, I'm really making Rachel do this cheese thing with a partner. I mean, she's got a partner, but I don't. I'm just gonna write random ass names down, all of them, just like all of the names I can think of, and see what happens. And then I'll just find someone with that name and be like, "We're soulmates.
Yeah,
You
but
didn't know?
you
Here's your
can't.
cheese."
You better
Like
find a place where you can safely keep these cheeses that the dog's not gonna eat your molded cheese.
cabinets. She's got like cabinets, and there's so many places. There's so many places that close. Look, it's fine. I'll keep them on the shelf over here. Not just to come in here. I'm gonna do it. How fun would that be though? Like if you found the moldy one, it's like a name you've never heard of, and then you just like meet someone with that name, and they're like, "Here's your moldy cheese. We're soulmates." Like I, I should not have ever learned what this was.
No.
This
Thank
is
you.
not good for the rest of the community, the world.
No, it's not.
It's fine. I'll keep you updated. Don't worry, world. I will post on Instagram if I do anything crazy with cheese. We'll see.
The Death and Aliens TikTok will just suddenly become a cheese talk.
Cheese. Oh, could you imagine? Nothing better. So anyways, Franklin and his weird cheese stuff. We learn his partner, Tobias, not his boyfriend, just his roommate partner, because very strongly not gay, as he says, does not eat cheese. So they're not really as compatible as they seem.
But and clearly not as compatible as he is with Hannibal because
God no, yeah. They are too much. And then Franklin starts talking about being alone because Hannibal's like, "Are you, scared of being lonely?" And he's like, "I'm not scared of being lonely. I'm not scared of the aloneness, but there's this pain that I'm like terrified of." He's like, "There's this ache from loneliness, and that's what I'm scared of." And I was like, God, this guy's like really deep for someone who's a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's so true. People aren't really scared of the loneliness, that pain that comes from it. That's really the problem. And so then we see this like god-like staging. You have like the god lights coming from the sky, and Abigail and Will are sitting over this dead body, and they're like having a brief conversation. She calls him dad.
Before that happens, we see Kowalski Franklin says all this stuff about
cheese and a partner.
about loneliness, and then you see like Hannibal pacing alone by himself and like going through things and opening books and everything, and you almost feel like he's like living out the pain that Franklin just talked about, but then it turns out that it's just because he's supposed to have an appointment with Will and Will has not shown up.
Yep. Yeah, and we didn't know that.
And like you have like but you see, well, he looks in his appointment book and it says 7:30. And you're like, and it's like, oh, all of that pacing and like making you feel bad for Hannibal for a second. It's like, oh no, just kidding.
Yeah. And see, like at first when he showed the like book, I thought it just wasn't 7:30 yet, and he was pacing because he was nervous about what conversation they were going to have. And then I realized later, obviously, that it was because he didn't show up. But yeah. So so in the midst of this weird scene, Abigail's calling Will dad, and he's going with it like he's, her dad who's now killed everyone. And then Hannibal walks in to go see him because he never showed up for this appointment.
Yeah.
And he tells Will, he's like, "Your eyes were open, but you were not present." And because he just gets in his own head about stuff. And so then they keep talking about like the situation and the Chesapeake Ripper. And he's like, "Here's the problem." He's like, "The whole issue is that the Chesapeake Ripper is basing this around public shaming. These people that are being killed are for a reason," which we did see, like, we've seen that a lot through our villains throughout this season so far. is they pick people that deserve it for some reason. Maybe it's not a good enough reason. Maybe it
Right.
is a good reason, but there's a reason why they've
Yeah.
chosen this person. It's not just random.
Yeah.
And that's when he's like, everything was public shaming except Miriam. That was only to get to Jack.
Right.
He was like, there was nothing that either she had done. There was no reason for any of that. It was just to get to Jack. And so we go to Beverly and Jack.
But that also explains why Miriam wasn't public, because Miriam
Right.
wasn't a trophy. It was a needle.
Right. Exactly. And so then we go to Beverly and Jack, and Beverly is found the new idea. And she's like, here's the thing. She's like, this killer is not going on these scenes and being like a ghost. He's driving the ambulance, because you're going to get away from a scene with an ambulance when someone calls 911, because you're all coming
Yeah.
from different directions. And so they go to look it up, and they go, I called it the ambulance home. I'm sure that's not what it's called,
I,
but
a bay, and
oh, an
maybe.
ambulance bay, probably. That makes way more sense. And they go to this ambulance bay, and they're talking to the guy who runs it, and he's like, no, that vehicle hasn't been checked out in ages. Like, I don't know like why it would be. And they start asking about this doctor, and he's talking about Dr. Silvestri, and he's like, yeah, but I don't like, he's not on today.
Yeah.
Turns out the vehicle is missing. It just wasn't checked out. Um, so they find it, and it turns out this Dr. Silvestri is doing surgery, because he's been in line, he's doing his MCAT, so he's like becoming a medical doctor at this point,
Yeah.
but he's not yet. And so he's doing all these like unauthorized, unsanctioned surgeries in the ambulance.
And not well.
And not well. And that's why we're seeing these issues that are coming up.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't look like a cheap attack, because he's actually trying to save them. And then Jack tells Hannibal to step in, because, as we know, Hannibal used to be a doctor, and he's like, we can't trust this random guy
Yeah.
who is doing this to like fix everything. So Hannibal has to step in and like take over.
Yeah.
And there's a weird like eye contact between Will and Hannibal here. And it's almost to the extent of like, it feels like Will knows there's something more going on. But it doesn't expand. It's just a weird eye contact.
Yeah. I noticed the weird eye contact, but I didn't really get it. Like, I didn't really know what it was trying to be.
I think it's just Will is catching on to more than Hannibal would like.
See, I don't know, because Will's still having fucking dreams where he's following deer and being friends with, and like
Right.
eating at a table that has got a dead body on it. So like, I don't really know that I trust anything Will's doing right now.
Well, and it could be in that sense of he feels so disconnected from his own brain right now that he's looking to Hannibal, because Hannibal's the only one that's like holding him together still. So it could be one of those two dichotomies. Like,
yeah.
it's too hard to tell at this moment. And so then of course we go to Hannibal, who's cooking his dinner. He tries to have Will stay for dinner, and Will's like, I've got an appointment. Here's some wine. And then he asks him why he stopped being a doctor. And we learned that he stopped being a doctor because he couldn't save someone. And he's like, well, you're an ER doctor. Like, everyone.
Yeah, like that
ER.
happens.
And he's like, well, I just lost.
He was like, it happened one too many times and I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. And so Will goes off to study the Ripper. He says he's a date with the Ripper, so he's going to find out more. And then we again see Jack in his head just wandering around.
Yeah.
Seeing things. And then last but not least, we see Hannibal's dinner party, where he has all the opera people there and Bloom, his bestie. And this is the moment where I was like, I think he might be putting stuff into these alcohols, because he's making his own wine at some point. He's making his own beer, we know. And he says, just a forewarning, nothing here is vegetarian, and takes a sip of his wine, which makes it feel like the wine is not vegetarian.
See, I didn't see it that way. I knew that that's what you were gonna say once I figured out what you're saying. I didn't see it that way. I just saw it as him being cheeky, as being a host, because he drinks wine with his therapist, and he drinks wine with Will earlier in the episode, and not all of it is wine that he made, and he has very strong opinions about good wines and good, and so I don't necessarily know that that's like, obviously we know his food is,
Yeah.
but I don't necessarily know if it is the wine or if that was just cheeky. Because even
Yeah.
even
And
in
I
the,
think,
because even in the book, like in the most famous Hannibal Lecter quote is, "I had his liver with fava beans and a nice Chianti." Like
right.
it's not like he is a um and what is the word I'm looking for? The animal carnivore. It's not like he's only
Yeah.
eating meat. Like he eats plants and he eats these other things. And
Right.
they're probably, while all the meat products are human, there's probably also some meat products that aren't, in like the
Right.
way he mixes things and flavors and sauces, and the he clearly eats vegetables and stuff. So I don't know that it would make sense, the process of trying to like, especially if he's not like keeping the bodies in a storage freezer somewhere,
Hmm.
he's taking the organs that he needs and leaving the bodies there. So it's not like he has access
Yeah.
to tons of blood and stuff like that. So
Yeah. And I think
I
that's
think
totally fair.
I think that was more of a cheeky like joke.
The only reason I questioned it was because of how he reacted with Bloom with the beer. Because he was like, I brewed this myself. And then he was like, no, this is just for you. Like, and so it felt a little bit targeted. And maybe it's just the beer,
And
maybe
maybe
it's
it's
not the
just
wine, or
because,
maybe it's half and half,
or
like,
maybe it's because he's trying to like seduce her, and
yeah, sure.
it's being
That's
like weird and creepy
also weird.
and not weird and cannibalistic,
Gross. Yeah.
just weird. Like
Right.
there's
Yeah, that's possible
there's a
too.
lot happening there.
Very true. Yeah. But yeah, and that's where we end our episode.
Yeah.
That's where we come out. I do have a bit of trivia.
Please tell me.
Oh, hold on, my mic has unplugged itself.
I can still hear you.
Uh, mm, oh God.
You still sound fine.
It just popped up and said my microphone is null. Uh,
Oh, okay.
and so I wasn't sure. It's okay, but if you can hear me fine, it's probably okay. I'm just gonna move that box out of the way. Um, it's okay. Anyway, so the green bathtub scene that we have with the body at the crime scene
Yeah.
was actually modeled after the setting of the bathtub in the Shining scene.
Okay.
Which makes sense. I didn't notice it at the time, but it does make sense.
Yeah, that was because that was a
Lot.
very specific
Yeah.
bathroom also. Like I was like, I've never seen a bathroom that big at a motel.
No, absolutely. Yeah, they've based a lot of it off of The Shining, I've noticed. And then there is one error whenever Hannibal pulls up behind the guy in the car. We see when he's looking at the oil dripping, we see the oil dripping, but there's not a lot of like wetness. There's some on the car, but not raining. When we turn, it's like pouring down like behind Hannibal, and then we flash back and there's no water again. So like they did not keep their rain. And I noticed that when I was watching it, I was like, there is no rain on this car. And it was just raining on Hannibal. And so like that was definitely an error.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's all I have for the trivia.
all right.
So do you have any like thoughts or predictions before we start punching people?
I don't know that I do. I mean, I think I've talked about a lot of my things, like the whole food thing.
Yeah.
I think Will is, I don't know who is gonna fall off the deep end first, Will or Jack, but they're both fucked right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And I am very concerned about Hannibal and Alana. Like that is, I'm very concerned.
Yeah.
Very.
I think he's gonna loop her in. I think she's gonna fall for it, which is
So I
unsettling.
I don't want him to kill her, but like I'd almost rather he killed her than got her to be on his side. Like, is that?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think he's gonna get her on his side. I think he's gonna,
I hate it.
but I don't think she's gonna like agree and be bad. I think she's just gonna not genuinely not know what's going on and just fall in love with Hannibal. Which is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Um,
I hate
but
it.
yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a lot to figure out still with the food stuff. I mean, there's a lot in your face, but then there's some minor stuff. And I want to know more about Hannibal's life because we vaguely know about him, but now we learn he's in this whole opera scene that he used to do dinner parties for people. Like he's much more social than we've seen.
Yeah, but I think that makes sense. That doesn't
and it
break
does.
the idea of Hannibal down from what
Yeah.
I've already thought.
No, for sure. I just want to know more. Like, I want to
Yeah.
expand on that backstory of like, what else is he involved in? Like,
Yeah.
how much are people involved in his life that we just don't know about yet? Um, but yeah, I do have the same concerns about Bloom. Bless her heart. She's gonna suffer, whether it be because she's in love with a mad person or death. Who knows? Um, yeah, and we're at the halfway part, essentially at 7 out of 13. So we are about to see a bigger downward spiral, I think. I agree. I think it depends on when we see Miriam again. Like, like I think if
Yeah.
we see Miriam in like the next episode, I think whenever we see her is gonna be Jack's like real undoing.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen till the finale, then I think Will might break first. But if it happens next episode, then I think Jack's gonna break first.
Yeah. See, I'm just concerned of where this is going because of what the cover art for season 2 looks like.
I haven't even looked at the cover art. I am so
Just
disconnected.
yeah, like well, just I was making things for the podcast, and when you type in
Mhm.
Hannibal season 1, like if you watch our podcast, there's that picture of Hannibal, like where you can only see his face down with the napkin.
Right.
The one that comes up for season 2 is a very different picture, and so I have questions.
I think I may have seen it because I think I know what the season 3 one is.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, all right. Well, in that case, who do you want to punch in the face?
Um, it would be very easy to just pick Hannibal.
Sure.
But I want to pick Jack because I think he is losing his shit and he's not handling it very well. And he's also going to get Beverly and Z and Will into some shit that they don't need to be into because he can't handle his own feelings.
Right. No, that's very accurate. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Z. He didn't do anything like wrong per se, but he had just annoyed me. Like, and he's not using logic. I mean, like we talked about the lab scene where he's like, these are the 22 components. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, those
Yeah.
things didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so he just kind of was obnoxious. So I'd like to punch him in the face. So who's your MVP?
My MVP is Beverly because she's the only person who acted like she was actually a fucking FBI agent in this whole episode. She solved a murder
True.
without having some weird psychopath breakdown like everybody else.
Yeah. No, that is very true and very fair. Bless her heart. I thought we were gonna hate her, and now it's like, God, she's the only one that makes any sense.
Yeah. Which also makes me concerned because I'm afraid to like anyone because I think that means that they're gonna die. So like I'm just keeping her at arm's length for the moment.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that was a great choice. I'm gonna go with Will. I think he did for his falling apart. I think he still did do a lot because he was coming up with good suggestions. I do think there is a duo team that's doing these murders, and I
That's
think
fair.
he's the only one that's really getting down to the like nitty gritty
Yeah.
of the Chesapeake Ripper. Beverly's very in the moment, and I think she is like
Yeah.
great.
She solved what they needed to figure out in that moment.
Today.
Yeah.
And I think she will continue to do that. I think she's going to be the one that's like, this is the next step we need to take. But in the like abstract, I think Will is like the only one really seeing what's happening,
Yeah.
abstract. So I'm going to go with him. But yeah, do you have any final thoughts or anything before we wrap it up?
The food that Hannibal made looked disgusting.
Oh, I was going to say delicious.
No.
You made me think
Usually,
of those prosciutto roses.
usually I get really upset at how good the food looks. The stuffed heart, that just like it
That
literally
did look disgusting. Yeah.
nothing on that table looked appetizing to me. And I was like, if somebody served this to me, I would be fucking pissed because this
Mhm.
just does not look.
Yeah, though that's totally fair. That's totally fair.
So that's my final thought. If you're going to try to secretly convince me to be a cannibal, you need to serve me prettier food than that because that looked really bad.
Right. Yeah, totally fair. Totally fair. Well, on that note, if you have thoughts, feelings, concerns, you can email us deathandaliens@gmail.com. You can find us on all of the social media at Death and Aliens. You can find me at CE Cloud 13.
And you can find me everywhere at EMKAY_superstar. That was the worst time to yawn. I am
She
so
does
sorry.
not want you to find her.
It's midnight in this state. I don't know what time it is where you are.
It's 11 where I am, but I
Yeah.
don't sleep at the right hours anymore. So who's to say what time it really is? Um, but yeah, all right then. If you will stay tuned, come Sunday, we're starting our season 6 of Stargate SG-1 on a new
Oh,
network with a bit of a new cast. So tune in if you'd like, and we'll continue with Hannibal next week. See ya.
bye.